Can Deion Sanders' new idea save college football? Will it even happen? I'll give you the latest.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I'm your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We're also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so that way you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. As we all know, Coach Prime is trying to revolutionize college football. He's trying to change the game forever. I have two questions that I will be addressing. One, does this save college football? Does this sort of preserve a tradition we love? The quick answer, yes, it does. And second question, is this going to happen? How close are we? What's going on? So I'll give you guys updates on both. To start, does this tradition save college football, or at least save a college football tradition? Does this idea, excuse me? I think it does, right? And I think Deion Sanders takes a lot of heat for being different, for being flashy, for being loud, for going against the grain, right? Everyone that doesn't support him hates everything he does, right? That being said, when programs like Texas, Ohio State, USC, Nebraska, Florida State, you name it, Florida, when they're all canceling their spring games because they want players to retire or they don't want there to be tampering, and it's like, okay, valid points, I guess, but we're killing a tradition, right? I think what we could do if we were them is schedule the spring game around their spring games around the portal. Plus, they're still going to have spring games in a way, right? They're still going to have scrimmages. The spring game, and I think a lot of people are missing this point, the spring game is like it's just the last practice where they let the fans in, right? There's not really anything special about it, right? It's still a spring practice. It's a scrimmage. Teams are still going to do that. That's not going to change. What's changing is they're not going to do it on TV, and they're not going to welcome in hundreds of thousands of fans, right? They just want to keep it low key. But you can't tell me they're going to go all spring and not do at least some sort of scrimmage format. And so for programs to get rid of this, one, it's devastating, right? Because I think that there's been a lot of fun moments in spring games, right? Like 2 years ago, when I was at the very first Coach Prime spring game, right? It was sold out. It was snowing. It was our first look at Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter at the Power 5 level, now Power 4. And it was just a fun experience, right? It was everyone's introduction to Coach Prime in Colorado because ESPN was there. It was nationally televised, right? They were doing interviews during the game. Like, it was a fun event. It was a spectacle. So for programs to get rid of it, it's disappointing, right? I think there's been a lot of changes in college football lately where it's like, okay, we're straying away from the sport that we love and turning into sort of NFL lights, and that's not what I want, right? I think what's made college football so special in the past is it's been college football. They've done things differently. They haven't been a carbon copy of the NFL, and I wouldn't say they're a carbon copy of the NFL just yet. That being said, I feel like we're getting there, right? I feel like we're getting to the point where it's like, okay, what WWNFLD? Like, what would the NFL do? And I don't want college football to be that because throughout my life, it has never been that. So I think this idea, assuming it works, will sort of change the perspective on certain programs, right? Not every program is going to want to do this, right? Because then you're going to have to travel for your spring game, extra expense. You don't get the perks of being at home, right? You don't get to control the environment. That being said, I think it's a great idea. I think a lot of programs, if it works out, will at least take a swing at it, right? Because what's the worst that can happen, right? I mean, injuries can happen, and I know people are going to say that that's why they won't do it. Injuries can happen during practice, right? There's guys who suffer season-ending injuries while running non-contact drills, right? So I understand the injury concern, right? I think you have to go into this game, like this spring game, knowing if we play this, we're going almost full speed, but we're not trying to hurt anyone, right? You're playing football, but at the same time, if you have a chance to blindside the quarterback off an interception, you don't do it, right? If you have a chance to kill a receiver over the middle, maybe you just push him down or something. I don't know, right? You don't want injuries to be a concern. You also want this to be somewhat of a football game. So that's a sort of a tough line to toe there. That being said, I think one, it generates interest in a slow time of the year. I think it saves spring games, and I think it gives your program attention, right? Like Syracuse they had a really good season, right? Kyle McCord, I think, had a little bit of a revenge year after Ohio State moved on from him. Granted, they won the championship without him, but he was sort of viewed as the problem the year before. And so he goes to Syracuse and leads them to a great season. They didn't get a ton of attention like Colorado. So this is huge for them because they're going to get a ton of attention. And then you also get exposure and you get a chance to see your offense, how it looks against another defense, or you get to see how your defense looks against another offense. So for that, I like it. In terms of Coach Prime and the process, right, because we have to know if we're close. So this is what we know so far. They have filed paperwork with NCAA requesting the ability to hold spring practices and a spring game in April. Colorado spring game is scheduled for April. I think it's 19th. Yeah, April 19th. ESPN2 is going to televise it. They petitioned for it already, right? So we know that. Currently, the NCAA bylaws prevent teams from holding practices with one another and exhibition games against each other in spring. That being said, the NCAA has been nothing more than a formality of late, and I feel like you get enough pressure on them, they will cave. So I do think it could happen. I mean, then a report according to CBS, I think pretty much just says the same thing, right? We're waiting on the NCAA. The ball's in the NCAA's court. So it's going to go one of two ways. One, the NCAA will finally be like, you know what? Something good can happen for our sport. Bring in money for these programs in a time where college football is not happening, right? There's no college football right now, right? There's spring practices, exciting, right? But we don't get to watch every single moment. We don't get to have any games until August, I think 29th or 30th, right? It's going to be a while. And it's one of those things where I just simply think you have to, how do I put this? You're the NCAA, get out of the way for once, right? Get out of your own way and let something great happen. Now, what I think has a very good chance of happening is the NCAA goes, we don't want to make an exception for just one or two programs, right? So, or this goes against our bylaws, blah, 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 blah. The NCAA is either going to shock us by allowing it to happen, because I'd be more shocked if it happened than if it doesn't, right? Or they're just going to be the typical NCAA and they're going to ruin something that could be great, because that seems to be in their DNA. So I'm 50-50 on it happening. I would love for it to happen, but obviously that requires the NCAA to not be the NCAA. So we'll see what comes out of this. When we come back, we're going to be talking about a little bit of recruiting. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so that way you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. Let's dive into some recruiting. So, as we all know, Colorado's on the search for a quarterback of the future. They have both Julian Lewis, Kane Salter in the room right now, but you need depth. You need room. You need depth after that. And a player that they've been linked to frequently is 4-star Oscar Rios out of Downey, California, 6'3", 175, 144th player in the country, according to 24/7 Sports, 10th best quarterback, 22nd best player in California. He's from the same school that Aiden Childs came from. He's going to be a 3-year starter. He's a dual threat. Completed 73% of his passes so far, and has a nice throw, nice release, and there's been a little bit of update on his, recruiting buzz, because he's got an interesting sort of list, right? He was once committed to Purdue, but he's sort of at square one right now, and he's got Colorado, Arizona, Oklahoma State, and Kentucky. And he's going to take 5 official visits. Colorado's going to be one of them. They get him on June 20th, which is the last visit. 24/7 Sports, as Tom Loy said, he's completely open to all programs. And I think realistically, this could be a good get for Colorado, right? I think this is sort of you take a chance here and push for him because you want to have depth beyond Julian Lewis, right? If Julian Lewis turns out to be a great quarterback, awesome. Then this guy will learn from him. If Julian Lewis, say, doesn't work out or maybe leaves the program for whatever reason, then you have backup, right? You have other options. So this past year for Downey, he threw for 2,500 yards, 22 touchdowns, 6 picks, completed 60% of his passes, which not bad, right? I mean, it's not the best, but it is what it is. And then rushing, he rushed for 735 yards and 4 games of 100+ yards rushing and 11 touchdowns. So this guy does a little bit of everything, right? We want that in a quarterback. You can't these days. It's really hard to build around a quarterback who can't run. And Shedeur Sanders was one of the exceptions because although he wasn't like turning on the burners, he was very mobile in the pocket. So we'll just have to, I guess, see how things go with Oscar Rios. But having the last visit, I like that, especially Coach Prime, because I feel like you get if Coach Prime is the last visit, that's the last thing in your mind. And I feel like Colorado puts on a hell of a recruiting trip for guys who are on officials, and we'll just have to wait and see. In terms of another interesting recruit that they're after, Jordan Clay. He's a receiver from Texas, 6'3", pretty big guy, 4-star. And he's got a little bit of everybody coming after him. Obviously, the Texas schools are after him, but Colorado's in the mix, right? Baylor is currently viewed as doing a great job with him. He's got Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Colorado are also in the mix. So I like what I'm seeing there. In terms of, like, let's just take a look at Colorado's transfer or their class in general. They currently have, and let me drum roll, please. They don't have any commits in 2026. It's been a slow start. Now, granted, it's kind of weird, right? Programs either have a lot of commits or have some commits, or they have none, right? Colorado has 0, which, I mean, it's fine because they're going to get some. They work a little bit slower than everyone else, but either guy would be a great sort of headliner, great sort of opening recruit, if you will. And then my favorite, I guess, offer that they have out right now. He's a receiver. I kind of spoiled it. He's not a high school recruit. He's a transfer. The Buffs are going after Sincere Brown, 6'5", 190. Very interesting prospect here because he is a guy who I think will generate some interest, right? He's a guy that when you're 6'5" and you put up, he had 61 catches for 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns last season, right? He's going to generate some sort of interest. That being said, as a recruit, he was lightly recruited out of Charleston, South Carolina. He was ranked as 2,606 recruit, 345th receiver. He had 7 offers, ended up going to USF. He didn't play at UCF. He had 1 catch for 19 yards. So transfers to Campbell eventually, makes his way to Campbell, and he blows up this past year. So now he's testing his luck in the portal. And shocker, programs are interested in a 6'5" receiver that had 1,000 yards receiving last year. He has Maryland offers, Kentucky, USF offered him again, Michigan, Wake, Arkansas, Texas A&M. Excuse me. So he's got a lot of big programs coming after him. I think for Colorado, when you have a receiver room that's not as proven, right, this could be a nice addition. I don't know if I expect him to be like the guy, but I would expect him to make some sort of role. I saw a comparison to Javon Antonio. I think that could be an interesting scenario, right? Because we didn't see a lot out of Javon Antonio, but he had a couple moments, right? And I think maybe he could do a little bit more than that. We'll just have to wait and see. But for those that don't remember Javon Antonio, he was from Northwestern State, 64 catches, 684 yards, 6 touchdowns the year before. Comes to Colorado, 17 for 209 and 2 scores. This guy's big, right? He's a red zone threat. Could possibly figure out a way to carve himself into the offense, because I think outside of the Miller brothers that aren't brothers, and Joseph Williams, I was going to call him JoJo Williams, Joseph Williams, I don't see a lot of, like, maybe Cam, right? I don't see a lot of experience, right? Isaiah Hard is trying to carve out a role for himself. So this could be an interesting fit, right? Maybe he just needs an opportunity to play even more. So we'll have to wait and see there. But those are the updates I have on you, Cruton-wise. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some NFL mock drafts, because NFL draft season's getting closer. This episode of Locked On Buffs, it's brought to you by Game Time. And let me tell you, imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful, and that's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Game Time picks curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concert, comedy, theater, whatever it is, they got it. Easy ticket shopping. I just checked the Game Time app, and there are amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. Like I say, we're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Okay, let's talk mock drafts. They're dropping every day. Pete Prisco, CBS Sports, dropped his today. And there's been some movement. So I'll just rattle through the list and see where our Colorado fellows are supposed to go, because, I mean, obviously, I think Colorado has a great chance of producing 2 top 5 picks, possibly even 2 top 3 picks, top 4, whatever. However you want to slice it and dice it. There are good chances, right? I think there's a lot of noise behind Shedeur Sanders falling. I think there's a lot of noise behind teams not being as high on him because of the combine or whatever. I'm here to tell you, teams need a quarterback. I don't know what to tell you. Like, he's going to go in the first round. So they have Cam Ward, number 1 to the Titans, Abdul Carter, 2nd to the Browns, Shedeur Sanders, 3rd to the Giants. Now, this is sort of a need and fit situation, right? The Giants need a quarterback. Brian Daboll is good at developing quarterbacks. Now, obviously, Daniel Jones didn't work out, but I don't think Daniel Jones was meant to be an NFL quarterback. That's a discussion for a different day. Shedeur Sanders is going to fit in with the Giants. They're going to have great weapons. They just need a quarterback, and they just signed Jameis, and so he doesn't have to come in, be the savior right away. He could come in, learn behind a guy who's an experienced quarterback, hopefully not learn his interception habits. That being said, I think the Giants, you're getting a marketable guy in a huge city. The excitement will be high. I like that pick. 4, they have Will Campbell, which Todd McShay said he doesn't see because he has short arms. I guess we'll have to find out. Apparently, to play offensive tackle at the NFL, you have to have arms of 33 inches or higher. If not, there's only 3 starting offensive tackles in the league that have arms that are shorter than 33 inches. And yeah, so Will Campbell apparently has short arms, and apparently that could be his downfall. So we'll just have to wait and see. Pick 5, Travis Hunter to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, it's interesting. They've ranked him as the top prospect and the best at his position. I don't know what position he's listed as, an athlete, so he'd probably be the only athlete. But they said, this is what he said: they need help at receiver, but they could also use an elite corner. Tyson Campbell's a good corner, and Jordan Lewis will be a nice addition. Can you imagine a secondary with Hunter added? His receiver value would also be welcome. See, if I'm Travis Hunter, and I say this all the time, I would want to play receiver more and let me fill in on defense when you need me, right? Put me in on third downs, put me in the red zone, put me in as your nickel corner. I don't care, right? Don't use Travis Hunter full-time corner because I think he's much more explosive. I think he's dynamic without the ball. So that's where they have Shedeur and Travis going. I like both of those fits. I don't think I think if either of them were to fall, it'd probably be Shedeur. And if he were to fall, it'd probably be to 21 to the Steelers, because that's the only other team that really, I think, would take a risk on a quarterback in the first round. And so, yeah, really interesting, I guess, layout, because I feel like we heard all this noise about Shedeur falling, and all of a sudden it's like, he's still going to be a first-round pick, top 5 pick. So I'm fully confident that he has a talent to be one. You guys let me know. What do you think? Shedeur Sanders, first-round pick, yes or no? Thank you guys for tuning in, making Locked On Buffs your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage.